Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacham Madam Sharirasya च Vrittis Yoga Guruttam Pravaram Marinam Patanjali Pranjali Ganatosmi Stuvek Patanjali Vyasam Shankaram Chamunitayam Tatra Sutrasya Bhashyasya Prama Vivaranasya च. Good evening, sir. After a period of more than, I think, 3.5 months, we are receiving the classes again. The Patanjali Yoga Sutras text. I think after a long period of more than 3.5 months, we need some kind of a revision and introduction to the text in general. So I shall try to begin by summarizing all those portions that we have already covered during last maybe 2 years of classes. So the text is Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Sutra itself, there is a Sanskrit word sutra, which has got two meanings. One, it means a garland, a thread, or it could also mean a pithy statement, aphorism, as it is called. It is called sutra. There are several sutra texts in both Hindu, Vedantic, and also Buddhist, Jain traditions. Many. There are perhaps scores of sutra texts. So Patanjali's Yoga Sutras constitute a text on yoga as a whole, which includes not only yoga psychology, but also the way the subject of our mind, the way our mind functions. Altogether, there are 195 aphorisms or sutras divided into 4 chapters. And these chapters are called technically pada, which means 1/4. So total 4 chapters, 195 sutras. We have already discussed a large portion of the whole text. In the printed book that you get from bookstores, you find the order is like this. First, there is Samadhi Pada, then Sadhana Pada, Vibhuti Pada, Kaivalya Pada. Samadhi deals with concentration of a higher type. Sadhana Pada deals with the means and methods and practices to attain this higher concentration. Vibhuti, which means the benefits, the powers, the mental, psychological skills that we derive through this practice. Kaivalya means liberation. Liberation from this cycle of life and death and rebirth. This is an important point to remember. How to get out of this cycle of birth, life, death and rebirth. So in the Patanjali system and in yoga system, there is a central idea that this life, this embodied life, which means being born, going through multiple experiences, good and bad experiences, pains and pleasures, sufferings and temporary enjoyments. This is not the happiest state of affairs. This is something to be got over, to be transcended, to be liberated from. So that's a central idea. More or less, you find all religious traditions. This idea is already there. I mean, this life as such is not the most perfect stage. It is an imperfect state of affairs, and we must get out of this to reach a transcendental state where we won't be going through these endless cycles of birth, life, rebirth, and so on. So that's called Kaivalya, the 4th chapter dealing with liberation, which we have not yet started. We have reached the Samadhi Pada, or the 3rd chapter of the text. So I shall give an outline of all these 3 chapters and a general list of the topics we have already discussed. So in the first chapter, we discussed the fundamental discipline with which we enter yoga. Here I want to point out an important aspect of study of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Though in the printed book you find the text begins with Samadhi Pada, in the normal course of study and practice of yoga, we do not begin with Samadhi, because Samadhi implies a very high state of mental concentration just before liberation. So that's an important point to remember. In the printed text, the first chapter that's given is Samadhi Pada, means the chapter dealing with the higher concentration. But in order to facilitate study and understanding, as they do in traditional Orthodox circles, I have started the text with Sadhana Pada, which means practices, the fundamental practices, the essential practices, and then the results, and then higher concentration, and finally liberation. This is subject. So far during the last more than 2.5 years of classes, I first discussed some of the definitions given in the Samadhi Pada. The first 14 sutras deal with definitions. For example, what is yoga is defined in the Samadhi Pada, which is actually the penultimate state. That's how the sutras are normally framed, because they used to teach and study and contemplate directly under teachers. So the confusion of chronology was never a problem in traditional ancient schools where they were taught, yoga sutras were taught and practiced. The first definitions, what is the meaning of yoga? So Patanjali, as we all know, gives the definition: yoga chitta vritti nirodha. What is vritti? What is chitta? And why we should practice yoga? That's the beginning of the text, Atha Yoga Anushasana. Now we are about to start study of yoga. Why should we study yoga? It is enough, alright, to start to practice physical exercises that will keep the body healthy. So why should we study Yoga Sutras? So the answer is given to understand our mind, to understand our emotions, to understand our feelings, how they operate and how they influence our character, why and how we behave the way we behave. If we can get an explanation as to why certain thoughts emerge in the mind, though we do not want those thoughts, we don't like those thoughts, we are tempted, prompted to do certain things which we do not really want to do, and we are not able to do certain things which we really want to do. If we can have complete control on our mind, our ideas, our thoughts, as we can have complete control on a machine that we operate, or more or less at a physical level, then there will be no problems. If any of us can have complete control on the workings of our own mind, then there will be no problems in the world. Because almost 95%, 99% of the people who live in this world want to live a happy life. Nobody wants to steal, nobody wants pain, nobody wants suffering. If somebody wants suffering, there is something wrong with that person. So even actions which we all know will bring suffering, we undertake under the wrong notion that those actions will bring us pleasure. So why we are not in a position, we are not able to have any restraint or control on our own mind, our own emotions, our own thoughts. So, if we can have a peep, a glimpse into the workings of our own mind, then we will be able to live better lives. So in order to understand that, Patanjali brings forward this unique concept. That's one of the unique contributions of Yoga Sutras to modern psychology. The concept of Vrittis and the concept of samskaras. So these are two important contributions of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So you read about samskaras, tendencies. In fact, a very scientific and psychologically profound explanation of how and why these samskaras function is actually a contribution of Vyasa, who wrote a commentary on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras called Vyasa Bhashya, which means a commentary on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Patanjali speaks only about Vrittis. So he defines yoga as cessation of Vrittis. Vrittis are frequently translated into the English word waves. So what exactly is Vritti? We already explained. But in order to proceed further from the 18th Sutra of Samadhipada onwards, in order to continue the classes, we have to keep all of this in mind. So Vrittis are nothing but the residual effects of all the actions, all the thoughts, all the words, all emotions and ideas that we experience. Any action we do, any thought we think, any word we speak, even a flash of ideas that crosses the mind will produce an immediate tangible effect, which we all know very well. If you give food to a person, if you give drinking water to a person who is thirsty, his thirst will be quenched. This is, if you give food, hunger is gone. These are all visible, tangible effects of our actions. But when you give food to a person, when you help a person, when you give drinking water to a person, that action produces an effect or a result which is not at all visible at the moment of doing that work. At that time, we are not able to experience it. That good action will produce an after effect which is not visible, but which is much more potent, which is really the foundation of our character. Because all actions produce an after effect. It registers a vritti or an effect, a residual effect on our mental system, and this mental system is what is called chittam in the Patanjali system. Not just a reservoir of memory, but the whole mental system is called is chittam. And in this mental system, our actions, good or bad, will leave, register a residual effect. And these effects are twofold. Technically, there are certain effects that we may experience in this life itself. And there are certain effects that we may not experience in this life, we may experience next life. So these vrittis can sometimes, they are related to 5 kleshas that will take us to the next important topic. Kleshas are related to experience and our reactions to those experiences. How we react to external experiences and how we react to experiences within our own mental system. If I feel happy, how my mind reacts to that experience of happiness. If I am unhappy, how our mind reacts to that unhappiness. So, I can demonstrate this phenomenon, how we respond. See, when we study something in a university or a classroom, there are 2 types of studying a subject. One method is we are paying the fees and the professor is getting his salary, the university is providing all facilities. So you are getting something. There is absolutely nothing human about it, nothing personal about it, nothing sacred, nothing very profound about it. Just as you buy vegetables in a market, so also you buy knowledge in a university classroom. There is nothing beyond that. But suppose you imbibe the same idea from a university or a teacher without this superficial give and take attitude. You attach a sense of sacredness or sanctity to what we learned. The same information which may be dismissed as a product may have a transformative effect on our character. We may look upon that information as a great piece of wisdom, and it will have a profound effect in our character. So, the same thing, the same information functions in two different ways. Similarly, any action we do as a sacred act with a lot of what we call in Sanskrit sutra, with a sense of sanctity, will have a profound, intense, spiritually transformative effect on our character. Otherwise, it will be very, very superficial. So, that's why Patanjali's system analyzes the mental system into two categories. Classifies into two categories. This is a deep, very profound analysis. One, our experience. Second, our reactions to those experiences. Our experience is called bhoga. Reactions to those experiences are technically called vega or udvega. So, our reactions could be, generally speaking, twofold or maybe threefold. Extreme liking or extreme dislike or fear or indifference. These are three different ways of our reacting to experiences. Depending upon the vrittis which are produced by a particular action or experience. If the vrittis are pleasant, we may develop an extreme liking for it. If they are unpleasant, we may develop an aversion for it. If it is something that repulses us, then it may produce a kind of fear or total indifference. So, now Patanjali says, that is physical kleshas, he says, generally speaking, these vrittis will produce an after effect and leave in our mental system two types of samskaras. So vritti becomes samskara. That is the central piece, the unique contribution of Patanjali system to modern psychology. Actions producing vrittis, residual effects, vrittis producing samskaras. Samskaras are deep-rooted tendencies, which are the results of vrittis, which again in their turn are caused by actions. Actions do not necessarily mean physical actions. It may be a thought. If you can have a good, holy thought, spiritually elevating thought, it will have a purifying effect in our mental system. If you have an unholy thought, the opposite result also will happen. So actions do not mean physical actions. It could be a thought, an idea, or even a desire. So Vyasa, the great commentator, makes an interesting point. At this level, at the mental level, even a desire to do good deed, even a desire to think a holy thought, even a desire to do some prayer, whatever it is, will produce an after effect in the mental system. See, at the physical level, if you have a strong desire to help a person, that person may not be benefited by that desire unless you actually implement what you want to do, but you actually do that. But at a psychological mental level, even a desire to do something noble will produce a subtle tendency. And these tendencies called samskaras. So, good actions, good thoughts, good ideas produce good vrittis, they produce samskaras. Samskaras become deep-rooted tendency to act, either not to do something or to do something. If the samskaras are caused by good experiences or good actions, then we may have a tendency to repeat the same action. Or if they are unpleasant, then we may avoid it. And this may prompt us to continue to act and to behave in a certain manner. This is how human character is formed, or this is how human emotions and attitudes and ideas are formulated. This is Patanjali's system. Now, so the first step according to him is Kriya Yoga. That's the definition of Kriya Yoga, which Patanjali Tapaswadhyaya Ishwarpanithanani Kriya Yoga. Patanjali defines Kriya Yoga in the beginning of the Sadhana Pada itself. So the first and most important topic discussed in the first chapter is Kriya Yoga. Tapaswadhyaya Ishwarpanithanani Kriya Yoga. Self-control, self-restraint, study, self-study, self-observation, feeding the mind with good thoughts, good ideas by reading, by associating the mind with good actions, good vibrations, and also a kind of recognition to higher power, God. These are some of the methods by which we end the spiritual life. It's called Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, unselfish actions. All these are included in this. So this is the first royal step into yoga as a whole. It is called the first sutra of Sadhana Pada. Sadhana means practices, observances, beginning of yoga life. So, and then he explains Dukkha Chaturvyuha, the four dukkhas, which we already discussed. For example, Heya, Hetu, Hanam, and Hanopaya. What is dukkha? A wise person, an intelligent person, a cultured person feels a kind of dissatisfaction with the external world, its pleasures. He is struck and sometimes shocked by the transitoriness of worldly enjoyments. So that produces in our mind a strong sense of incompleteness, inner imperfection, which is the essential characteristic of a highly cultured, evolved, wise person. So it is called dukkha. Very important point. That's the first qualification to spiritual life and the first qualification to seriously study yoga. That's the first sutra of yoga. Yoga itself, Atha means Atha Yoga Anishasana. Now onwards, we will have a detailed discussion or an exposition of yoga. That's the first sutra. Atha means when we realize the money, the wealth, all the material pleasures, they cannot bring us lasting peace and happiness. We need not discard them, but we should be able to look beyond them. So we start looking beyond them only when we are convinced of the transitoriness of all this. So this could happen only to a cultured, refined person. So the commentator Vyasa says, yoga, the ability to look upon the world of material enjoyments as something incomplete, as something imperfect, is the first step to any higher life, yoga life. This happens only to a highly evolved person. Parinama, tapa, samskara, dukkhehi, guna, visheshacha, Dukkhameva sarva vivekinaha. This is the 15th sutra of Sadhana Pada. For a highly evolved person, all these material pleasures are incomplete or imperfect. So he feels a kind of inner incompleteness, inner imperfection of all this. That is the characteristic of a viveki or a wise person. So there is a way out of it. Of course, before that we should know the cause of it. The cause, the real reason, cause for this dukkha is association of our association with various external objects. The main drashta, drishya, connection. The experiencer, the experienced, the seer, the seen. Or rather, to be very simple, we associate with many external objects, various material objects, and we identify ourselves with these objects, and we delude ourselves into thinking that they will bring lasting peace and happiness. They are perfect. We attribute permanence to things which are essentially impermanent. We expect them to be everlasting. So this everlasting quality is attributed to things which are essentially impermanent, which are transitory. So this is the cause of this dukkha. So how to get out of this eradication of this imperfection, this dukkha? It is possible only by removing ignorance. Ignorance is the root, the fundamental cause of all these feelings of inner imperfection. In fact, the ability to feel dissatisfied with the external enjoyments, visual objects, which will only eventually will bring only disease and death, bring only unhappiness and pain. But we are not able to understand this at the time of enjoying these things. We delude ourselves into thinking that they will bring lasting peace and happiness, but eventually they will bring only unhappiness. This fact, a yoga seeker is able to understand and realize before these problems actually happen. So what is the characteristic of a yogi or a yoga student? A yoga student is able to realize the possibility of pain and grief and sufferings before they all unfold in their horrific forms. That is why it is possible for a viveki or a wise person. The sign of wisdom according to yoga is the ability to feel this imperfection or incompleteness of external physical enjoyments. So then eradication of ignorance or avidya. And this is called Kaivalya, liberation, the subject of the 4th chapter. And what is the means, how to really bring this about? So means of eradication of dukkha, it is possible through the practice of, it is called technically speaking, unbroken practice of Viveka-Khyati. That's what we are going to discuss in the coming sutras from 18th sutra Samadhipada onwards. So this is the general picture of yoga. Now, before really resuming the class onwards, one more point I want to make clear. In the Samadhipada, before we actually reach this stage of 18th sutra, we discuss some very important sutras which are famous and which are closely related to Hatha Yoga. Not directly but indirectly. So Patanjali unfolds the well-known Ashtanga Yoga at the beginning of Samadhi Pada. So it's a Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. 8 disciplines, which are called technical Ashtanga Yoga. Yamas and Niyamas constitute the fundamental disciplines that every civilized human being should practice, not only students of yoga. So, in a way, Yamas and Niyamas together constitute the very foundation of universal ethics and morality. Not not morality and ethics enforced by the constitution or the law enforcement system, but morality and ethics which are inherently required for the continuance of human civilization and culture. Yamas constitute 5 disciplines: ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. Ahimsa means non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing, not having a desire to possess things which rightfully belong to others. Then inner purity, chastity, self-restraint, and also not having desire to possess other people's things, because any kind of greed, any desire for something something that's not ours, will create in our mental system to go out of the way to possess those things, and that will suppress whatever good qualities we may have. If a greedy person may go all the way out to achieve, to attain, to gain what he wants to gain, not always through rightful means, sometimes through wrong means. So these are the first fundamental disciplines: non-violence, not having any violent thought, violent tendency, violent desire, violent ideas, complete eradication of any thought or desire to do things which may be of a violent nature, complete eradication of the idea of violence from our mental system. These are 5 fundamental disciplines that Patanjali calls Sarvabhauma. They are universal, ethical, spiritual principles. The second group of disciplines are called Niyamas: purity, contentment, then reading. Swadhyaya means reading good books, practice of spiritual disciplines, resignation to God, etc. And also self-restraint, tapa, self-restraint, restraining the senses, restraining thoughts. Swadhyaya, reading good thoughts. Our tendency to go after various external visual sensual objects can be restrained or controlled by feeding the mental system with good spiritual food. And spiritual food for the mind means good ideas, associating the mind with holy thoughts, holy ideas, etc. So tapaswadhyaya, self-pridhana, etc. And shauja, inner purity, and outer purity, external and internal purity. So these disciplines constitute the fundamental universal ethical philosophy in general, not only for yoga seekers, but for all civilized human beings. After this asana, physical posture, pranayama, breathing exercises, of course I already gave elaborate descriptions of how and why it is very important for one to get established in Yama and Niyama before starting asanas, complicated physical postures, and also breathing exercises. So I already explained for quite a long time. Because any practice of complicated asana or physical postures and any practice of breathing exercises which include retention of breath within or without, which is Antarkumbhaka, Bakikumbhaka in the yoga system, can be harmful unless one is fully established, or at least is trying to get established in these disciplines. That is an important thing, because asana and pranayama produce energy and heat and enthusiasm, because the nervous system gets overhauled. As a result, we feel energized, and before this really happens, we should already have established, or least made some effort to get established in these 10 fundamental disciplines. Then pratyaya, dharana, dhyana, samadhi is already discussed. Now we are coming to the 18th sutra, which we really started in the last session, as far as I remember. So today I tried to, for a few minutes, 1 or 2 minutes, I tried to play the last class that we had on June the 23rd. So then I found, this is the sutra where we left. Little while ago, somebody informed me, this is the sutra that we had to discuss from now onwards. 18th sutra of Samadhi Pada. The sutra is this: Virama Pratyaya Abhyasa Purvaha Samskaraseshu Anyaha. So Virama Pratyaya Abhyasa Purvaha. So here, of course, the Asamprajnata Yoga is discussed, or Asamprajnata Samadhi it is called. Samprajnata Samadhi, Samprajnata Yoga was discussed in the previous sutra, 17th sutra. So Samprajnata Yoga, Samprajnata Samadhi gives us control over nature. Nature in a way implies our status as a part of the universal creation in a very gross sense. See, there are two ways of looking at ourselves. One way to look at ourselves is that we are not just a part of this physical evolution, the universe that undergoes this flow of evolution. We are much beyond that. The Yoga and Sankhya system will teach you that we are essentially the Purusha, or in Vedantic perspective, we are the Atman, not the inert, not part of this inert universal matter. Beyond that, we have within us the essence of life. I mean, we are consciousness, we are the conscious Purusha, not the unconscious Prakriti. So, in the previous classes we already explained, according to Yoga and Sankhya system, the evolution of the universe and the evolution of our own entity as a physical being is like this. Prakriti is the original cause. From Prakriti, Mahatattvam, Buddhi, Ahankara. From Ahankara, Tamasika Ahankara, Rajasika Ahankara, Sattvika Ahankara. This physical universe of which our body is a part evolves. And also our senses, 5 senses of perception, 5 senses of action, and our mind, all these evolve out of Prakriti. And Prakriti by nature is inert. So look at a human being, coming down to the very, very ordinary level. Look at a human being. If you look at a human being or a living organism, just as a living organism that eats, moves and dies, then that's one way of looking at it. Then we are part of the evolution of nature or universe. But Vedanta and Yoga look upon a living organism essentially as a conscious entity which has got a body. Not a body with a soul, but rather a soul with a body. We are essentially a conscious entity, a soul with a body, with mind, with senses, with the ability to make use of the five elements. We are not part of the inert universe which has evolved from Prakriti. Rather, essentially, we are a living, conscious reality. So, this is the Vedantic or yogic way of looking at ourselves. So, when we are able to control our external nature, our natural tendencies, physical tendencies, then we reach Samprajñāta Samadhi. It gives us mastery over nature. In fact, as we evolve in spiritual life, even as we try to meditate, pray, when we advance in spiritual life, we will be able to attain a kind of self-restraint. And self-restraint means a mastery over our natural tendencies. Which nature? Our natural nature. So, if the mind thinks of certain things which we know not very good, then we are able to exercise self-restraint. When the senses move in one direction, then we are able to withdraw the senses from that trap, and we are able to suggest to ourselves, to our higher identity. So we have a higher identity, which is we are Atman, we are a soul, we are the soul with a body. But those who do not have this ability to control or restrain or exercise self-restraint over their own nature, over their own tendencies, they will be they will just be part of nature. So the first step in yoga, when we advance further, we find that we are able to exercise this self-restraint over our own natural tendencies, spontaneous tendencies. So that state of samadhi, concentration, is called Samprajñāta Samadhi. When we are able to transcend that state, it is called Asamprajñāta Samadhi. So we will discuss this in the next class onwards. So you can have interaction, you can, if there are questions you want to ask, you can ask. Otherwise, I shall continue with the text. An active interaction is key for a discussion like this.
So, in Sankhya philosophy, I mean, you have Prakriti and Purusha. But, you know, from a Vedantic or from a practical, common sense point of view, I mean, Prakriti would have no meaning were it not for Purusha, because there would be no knowledge of Prakriti. So, I mean, the two have to be inseparable to make any sense. I mean, if Prakriti existed without Purusha, well, it would be unknown.
From the highest Vedantic perspective, Yoga and Sankhya philosophy are only preparing our mind to accept the higher Vedanta. See, when we realize the truth of Vedantic experience, when we realize the fact we are the Purusha, from that moment onwards, we will realize the irrelevance of the concept of Prakriti. So let us say, where Yoga and Vedanta constitute an attempt to understand Vedanta from a dualistic point of view, because both are dualistic philosophies. So Shankaracharya, the great Advaita philosopher, doesn't accept Yoga and Sankhya as conclusive philosophies. He accepts the details, not the conclusions. For example, the analysis of senses, mind, buddhi, chitta, and how the three gunas function our mind, when we have not yet reached the highest spiritual realization. All these details are fully acceptable to Vedanta. Even in Vedanta, before you actually realize the truth, not as a concept, but when we really experience the reality of Vedanta, before that stage, these ideas are relevant because they help you to understand how the mind functions. To give an example, the Vedantics believe in the purification of mind. We call Chitta Shuddhi or Sattva Shuddhi, purification of the mind. But mind should be emptied of all impure thoughts, vrittis, vasanas, etc. These are important qualification for realizing the fact that we are the Atma. Now, that state is actually called Chitta Shuddhi, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. So, what yoga philosophers call Chitta Vritti Nirodha, cessation of environmental vrittis, is the same as Vedantics call purity of mind. Where mind is emptied of all waverings, conflicting waves, conflicting thought currents. That state is called state of mental purity, which is what makes you fit for the Vedantic realization. So how to reach that state? Through unselfish actions. Selfish actions will always produce, it always leaves some after effect in the mental system. Whatever we do with the full identification, I am doing this, I want a result of all this. It won't stop with the action. Even after the action is over, still the mind will retain these vrittis, after effects. It may be in the form of anxiety, in the form of thoughts, concern for the result of what we have done, etc. On the other hand, the same action if you do without any selfish desire, without any personal identification, then it won't leave any thought currents, any concern or anxiety in the mental system. This is called nishkama karma or unselfish action. So if you go on practicing this nishkama karma or unselfish actions, then what happens? You will be doing a lot of good things, but mind will be totally free from any concern. There is no vritti left in the mind. Technically, at the experience level, this is called vritti nirodha in yoga system. And Vedanta, we call it chitta shuddhi or purification of the mind. Purification of the mind means mind being emptied of all impure thought. Impurity, the word impure is a Sanskrit translation. It is not what it means in the dictionary. It means any conflicting thought currents. So very often, chitta shuddhi, the Sanskrit word, shuddhi means purity. So we translate that way. So very often the English translation may not necessarily give the real implication. Impurity here doesn't mean anything nasty or dirty. It means thought currents which function in the form of anxieties, concerns as to what will happen, I have done this, is it going to succeed, is it going to really work? So mind gets disturbed. This state is called, in Vedantic state, terminology it is called a state of impurity. So the translation is from Sanskrit in English. So you go to dictionary, you get this translation. So through translation, when you approach, we may not get the full implication. So this is what is called nirodha in yogic language. Means going beyond mind, being in a state of perfect equilibrium, balance and tranquility. Then you are ready for realization of Vedantic truth, the fact that we are Atma. Now, up to this point, Advaita agrees with yoga, not beyond this. See, the conclusions of yoga and Sankhya philosophy are not acceptable to Vedantins. The Shankaracharya takes pains to refute them actually. Because yoga, Sankhya conclusion, well, I would say it's almost ridiculous. For Sankhya, analysis of human mind is extremely scientific and very incisive, very precise analysis of the human mind, emotions and ideas. So they are accepted by Vedantics, not the conclusions. That's why you don't find anywhere in the world people who follow Sankhya in their life. But there are many people, great thinkers, who try to follow Vedanta in their life. But I don't think anybody will try to follow Sankhya in their mind. But if you study the Sankhya system, you'll be struck by the detailed analysis of human mind, their explanation of human emotions, ideas and attitudes, how what we do now will influence what we are going to do tomorrow. How the attitude with which we do something today is going to influence the way our mind is going to function tomorrow. Very detailed analysis yoga and Sankhya philosophers give, but not the conclusions. So, the study of yoga will be a tremendous help. In fact, I during my travels, part of the system, I had to go to Singapore, Ramakrishna Mission. We have a very well established big center. The 250 yoga instructors this practicing yoga and interested in yoga sutra. So it's something very interesting. The analysis of human mind, how emotions function. So yoga is very important. But the conclusions of yoga and Sankhya philosophy, from a metaphysical point of view, are not very profound, because as we proceed further, you will learn more about them. But they are very remarkable for the detailed analysis of the human mind, emotions and feelings, and how our actions and thoughts really influence our character and the way we behave. That's it, the way we think. So we will have the next class next Friday. So sorry for the long absence. We couldn't help. Thank you. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Rama Krishna.